Are we allowed to call this the best weekend of the year? I mean, it is week 11. There will be more significant weekends, NFL calendars, NFL schedules, if you will, later in the season. But heading into week 11 with one game already in the rearview mirror, I think this is the best one. We welcome you to another edition of Thinking Out Loud. Like, subscribe, follow the YouTube channel, Siciliano Show. We're on all the podcast platforms. Tell your friends about it. We're now on Blue Sky, by the way. At least I am this week as well. At Andrew Siciliano. No, it's not a political comment. It's just whatever. It's a new platform. We'll get on it. I just wanted to make sure somebody had my name. Unlike on YouTube, where somebody has my name, give it back to me. Welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Andrew Siciliano. We do thank you for being here. We're here multiple times a week, normally on Friday here, previewing this week's games. Sam Batesh, it is, for my money, the best weekend, at least so far on the calendar, considering you have 4 games between 2 teams, 500 or better, including, congratulations, your Eagles running away from the Commanders late last night.
It was the first time since 1996 for that rivalry, Andrew, that the Eagles and the Washington football team were 4 games over 500 facing one another. So we're talking Norv Turner versus Ray Rhodes. But it lived up to it early, and it certainly looked like the Commanders had control there. And it was a fantastic game. And if that was on the slate for Sunday, we would be even more overwhelmed trying to choose which games here matter the most. And we know there's a doozy, and I know we're going to get to all of them. And wow, pretty good weekend here that we've got ahead of us.
Yeah, it's an amazing weekend. Obviously, the Chiefs and the Bills and the Taylor Swift concert Saturday night in Toronto. Will Travis Kelce be there? Just a short drive from Orchard Park. That will dominate the headlines. The CBS, the NFL Today pregame show with Hall of Famer James Brown, broadcasting Hall of Famer, with the best dressed man in television, Nate Burleson, with Bill Carr, with TJ Wyatt. Inside NFL Network joke there. All of them will be on set. I believe it is the first time ever, I wouldn't say on set, like at the stadium, that the CBS pregame show mid-season is going on the road. It is that big of a game. We'll get to it in a second, as Sam just said. Let's get to the game last night, where the Commanders looked as if, I don't say they had this game, but this was, and Carissa Thompson pointed this out on the Amazon Prime postgame show after the game. There really weren't any second or third quarter highlights. This game was, I don't want to call it a sleeper, a doozy. It wasn't that good until the fourth quarter when Dan Quinn had a huge decision to make. What do you do for it? On fourth down, do you kick the field goal, 4th and 2 on the Eagles' 26-yard line with 8 minutes to go? You're down 2. Do you try to take the lead with your kicker out, Austin Seibert out, and Zane Gonzalez, your kicker? Do you take the 44-yard attempt and take the lead with 8 minutes to go? Or do you go for it on 4th and 2? Dan Quinn decided to go for it, and it kind of looked like a busted play. Jaden Daniels kind of got tripped up running into his offensive lineman, backing away from center. He tried to run around the right end. He didn't get it. They turned it over on downs, and then Saquon took over, and the game was, in essence, over from that point. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. It's something Brian Billick, Sam, always told me when we were working together at NFL Network. As the former head coach, it's the right move if it works. It's the wrong move if it doesn't work. Now, I put that on Twitter and X and Blue Sky and Threads last night, and people attacked me. No. Wrong decision. Like, well, that you're kind of proving my point. No. It was the wrong decision all along. Like, okay, whatever. But it's the wrong decision when it doesn't work. If they got the 3 yards and they milked the clock and they eventually scored a touchdown and the Eagles had no time left, then it would have been the right decision. It was the wrong decision. It didn't work. People are trying to take this grand, get some big thing from this game that the Commanders aren't legit and the Eagles are a Super Bowl contender. Now, I don't buy that, or that Saquon's going to be the MVP. We felt this way about Saquon the entire season. I mean, he went over 1,000 yards. We're still 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving. Went over 1,000 yards last night. The Saquon has been a game changer for the Eagles. Headline to me wasn't new last night. It was a national broadcast, so maybe it was new to the rest of the world. I don't think, Sam, that Saquon would have been this good with the Giants. Their offensive line is a mess. Yes, they would have been better with him. This is the Saquon that we knew has been there for a while. He's just healthy and with a dominant offensive line, with a dominant offensive line coach and Jeff Stoutland, as good as there is in the business. Bill Callahan certainly a part of that conversation as well in Tennessee. And it is showing. But the idea that Saquon has changed the Eagles and has hurt the Giants with his departure, to me, isn't news. But I guess the national audience saw it last night in a standalone game again.
I think also, Andrew, the part of it is the Hard Knocks for the Giants was also really interesting to see a lot of it unfold in real time for people to understand what goes on when you've got a star player that is in the balance and might go somewhere else, and not just somewhere else, but remember this moment from Hard Knocks, Andrew, I'll just play it for those. It's been referenced many times, but this is John Mara and Joe Shane talking about what may happen with Saquon from the offseason.
What's the latest? Just on the Saquon thing.
I just got a text that Chicago's driving the price up and Philly's out. I don't know if that's true or not. Which I don't know if I'll make a couple of calls. I don't even know if that's gonna happen, but
I have a tough time sleeping if Saquon goes to Philadelphia. I'll tell you that. As I've told you, just being out. I've been around enough players. So, but he's the most popular player we have by far.
yeah.
Sort of interesting, like your fourth down take, Andrew, right? I mean, it's one of those positions, running back, where teams don't generally make that commitment at that price point. And the price point was similar with what he ended up, what he ends up making per year with Philly and New York. But I think you're exactly right. This story's been building. And frankly, it was probably a bigger deal, Andrew, when Saquon ran all over the Giants themselves. That was a game, obviously, a few weeks ago, wasn't on national television. And so maybe it wasn't as big a deal to people. But this Eagles offense, which once ran through maybe a little more Jalen Hurts, you would say, clearly runs as Saquon does. And if you look at numbers first half or second half and what Saquon's been able to do, you probably hit the best point, which is it's not fair to say, oh, the Giants would be this with Saquon.
No way.
It's just no way. It's just entire that the personnel is so different. And even Saquon says it running behind that line. He says it constantly. He's giving the credit to an offensive line that for years, according to PFF, has been at the top. Sure. It's been at the top. Obviously, they used to have Jason Peters, but having Lane Johnson, all of that being said, I think you're right. It's not necessarily a news story, and it's unfair, but for whatever reason, it does seem that now every Eagles game has Giants fans, of course, now just, being piled on or piling on themselves, and there you have it. But you're right. Maybe not much change there.
I think the Giants fans have a lot more to worry about at this point. The Saquon ship has sailed, and it was sailing through the Commanders' defense, obviously, in the fourth quarter a lot last night. I'm happy for Saquon, truly. And the scene where he's doing the post game, and you have all the Eagles fans chanting, "Thank you, Giants," behind him or in front of him there, the way the set is set up on the sideline was cool. Was cool to see. People forget he's from Pennsylvania. Right. He went to school at Penn State. The idea of him being there feels right, feels good. And yay for the Eagles. I don't think that the Eagles are better than the Lions. I don't think that the Eagles are going to go to the Super Bowl. But the Eagles now are in the driver's seat. They still get another one against the Commanders to win the NFC East. And Sam, the stat that you always go back to, that we have not had a repeat winner in the NFC East. It's now going to be 20 years because it's not going to be the Cowboys. It continues to amaze. I went down a rabbit hole last night. That staff in 2004, when the Eagles won 4 consecutive, that staff under Andy Reid with Donovan McNabb as the quarterback had 6 future head coaches. John Harbaugh. So that's how long it's been. John Harbaugh's in his 17th year. John Harbaugh, Sean McDermott, and Steve Spagnuolo were the 3 most recognizable names. Then there's Brad Childress, longtime head coach of the Vikings. Pat Shurmur, who was head coach of the Browns, most recently offensive coordinator for Deion Sanders at Colorado midseason last year. That's crazy. And then David Culley, who was one and done with the Texans before DeMeco Ryans. David Culley was that team's wide receiver coach. 6 future head coaches on Andy Reid's staff. Plus, at that point, former Lions head coach Marty Mornhinweg was there as well. as an assistant. So 7 head coaches on that staff behind Andy Reid.
And it won't happen again, Andrew, as you said. Cowboys, everyone remember, it was not the Eagles, but the Cowboys. The Eagles had the late collapse last season. It was the Cowboys who won the division last season. So this won't even be matching that. So it'll
be
won't
20
be
years.
a repeat winner. It will be the 20 seasons. And that is that. And I think you're absolutely right with what Saquon has done. Yeah, he's when we say in the MVP conversation, what that actually means is he's not going to win it. I
No,
think
he's not going to win it.
in the MVP conversations means he's worthy of this conversation on standalone game nights. Yes, but he's not going to win the award.
Well, let's get to the 5 games that mean something to us, and we'll tell you who is going to win the MVP, assuming he continues to play this well. I think it's a fait accompli. I think he's the best player in football right now, not named Saquon Barkley. Or look, Myles Garrett had 3 sacks in four plays last week. 3 sacks, 4 plays. But as we put the schedule, again, 5 games, it means something to us. It's a great week as we put this on the screen. I think Lamar Jackson's going to win the MVP. And that game there in Pittsburgh with the Hard Knocks cameras there, I'm told Hard Knocks started filming last week with all 4 teams in the AFC North. They are in the building, so to speak. That game is as good as it gets. It's the Ravens at 7-3, the Steelers at 7-2. Right now, the Steelers lead the AFC North. They're the 3 seed in the AFC, and the Ravens would be the wild card, at least out of the AFC North. They're the 5 seed in the AFC overall. Steelers have won 4 straight, and what's bonkers is that this is their first division game of the year. Their next 4 games are in the division, including a game on a short week Thursday night in Cleveland coming up next week, where it could be cold and raining, like mid-40s and raining next Thursday. Just keep that in mind. Why is Lamar Jackson the MVP? Well, let me give you this stretch right here. Lamar Jackson is playing quarterback in these last 8 games. Let me use take 2 here. I know we're live.
We'll re-rack. Yeah, we'll re-rack.
No. Don't re-rack. Stay here. We're going to use take 2.
No, I'm kidding.
This is the best 8-game stretch we've seen at quarterback since Tom Brady during the Patriots' perfect season in 2007. I am not a fan of passer rating. I've said that 100 times. Tell me, please, the next time you're in a bar among football fans and somebody says, man, I don't know about our quarterback. Man, if he could only get his passer rating above 90, maybe I'd believe in him. Nobody cares about passer rating. It's a metric that no one even understands. What does 158.3 mean to you? I don't know, but that's what a perfect passer rating is. But let me use passer rating as a metric. During these 8 games, Lamar Jackson's passer rating is 136.1. Now, granted, they're not undefeated in these 8 games. I saw him lose to the Browns a couple of weeks ago. It is the second highest passer rating over any 8-game span in NFL history. The only better was Tom Brady during the Patriots 16-0 during an 8-game span there, and it was 0.1 better, 136.2. So you want to go back to Tom Brady in 2007. That's the only time during an 8-game window where statistically using passer rating, anybody has played better than Lamar Jackson. He is your MVP, and I think the Ravens go on the road and win this game. I really do, even though the Ravens' pass defense is awful. There's no better way to describe it. It is just bad. They have the best rush defense in football and the worst pass defense in football. How is that a thing? I don't know, but I do think a little bit of the bloom comes off the rose this week for Russell Wilson. I'm just feeling it. They're talking about, why don't we sign Russell to an extension?
Oh, wow.
Right now. I say they, meaning talking heads in the national media space. I get it. It's a good conversation to have. I just got a gut feeling. The Ravens are rested. They played Thursday night last week. I know Russell's got a touchdown in 22 consecutive games, which, by the way, is the longest streak in the NFL. Not Josh Allen, not Patrick Mahomes, not Lamar Jackson, not Justin Herbert. The longest streak, consecutive games throwing a touchdown pass in the NFL, belongs to Russell Wilson. I just got a gut feeling. I got a gut feeling, Sam, and I have no other reason than that I think the Ravens go in and beat the Steelers this week.
I'm completely torn on this as well, and I could go any which way. Of course, it comes down to this: they're going to split the 2 games they play. That's what it feels like. Divisionally, it feels like the Ravens and Steelers will split the two games they have against one another. And I'll side here, home team, and say the Steelers find a way to win this one. Now, Lamar Jackson 1-3 in his career versus the Steelers with 0 rushing touchdowns, which is sort of interesting. But then again, it's not. I mean, he doesn't.
And Steelers are beating him 7 of 8. Like, not him,
yes,
them. The Steelers have won 7 of 8 in this series. They've dominated it of late.
Absolutely. And the Russ statistics are 3-0 in his 3 starts, 30 points or more in those 3 games. So there's a little bit something building here, but it feels like this will be one of those down to the wire games. And it simply feels whoever wins this one will not win the next one. That's just how I see it. I would be stunned if either of these teams swept the other in this division. That's just what it feels like. It was the best division in football last year, and it just feels like these two are peaking at the right time right now. I still think Cincinnati is going to squeak in there and become a playoff team, but regardless, I think these two are going to split, and I'll simply say on this one, Steelers find a late way to have something happen here. But then again, we could also be back here next week talking about Derrick Henry MVP. Lamar, we've already said MVP. I mean, this could very well be another nail in that as we build the resume towards who MVP is. And we can just say this, even though there is another game later that we're going to talk about, which is probably the game of the week, but rivalry wise, and I know people like to say that, this, for my money, and no one's digging in my pocket, but Ravens Steelers is just always legendary. Yeah. When these two teams matter, this game is special every single time.
They play again week 16, a couple of days before Christmas in Baltimore. That is a middle, for now, and I don't think it'll change, a middle of the afternoon CBS game. CBS game, or is it a Fox game? You never know these days. It used to be you knew by the road team. Now you never know. That game, week 16, is actually a Fox game. Ravens-Steelers, week 16, middle of the afternoon. Makes no sense.
Yeah, just
remember
like
when you're able
Eagles.
to figure these out?
Yeah, Cowboys-Eagles with CBS last week. With Romo, which
makes no sense. But hey, whatever. Mix it up. Ravens and Steelers, everybody. With Kyle Hamilton, good news for the Ravens. He says he is going to play as we record this late Friday morning on the West Coast, Pacific time. West Coast, Pest Coast. Okay.
Yes.
Well, it is when it comes to time zones. Let's go counterclockwise. So let's go Seahawks and the 49ers. Speaking of the West Coast, this is your NFC West game. This is a game where, believe it or not, if the playoffs were to start today, which they don't, neither team would make the postseason. They'd both be out right now. Niners are 5-4. The Seahawks opened 3-0. And then the Seahawks, this story has kind of gone under the radar here. The Seahawks have face planted, really, since going 3-0. If you go back, and they've lost 5 of 6, you go back to, let's go week 4. There are 6 teams that have won only 1 game since week 4. And they are, not surprisingly, the Jets, the Giants, the Raiders, the Saints, excuse me, hate to say it, the Browns, and the Seahawks. Interesting. They have just fallen off. They've had injuries defensively, certainly. DK Metcalf on the offensive side of things. And they are still very much in this at 4-5. Matter of fact, the NFC West is the only division in which it's really only like game and a half dividing everybody here. And I beg your pardon again, but neither team would be in right now. Now, much like the Ravens and the Steelers, this is a one-sided rivalry of late. The Niners have beaten them, if you include the playoffs, 6 consecutive. And in that streak, the last 4 have been by double digits. So the NFC West is kind of circular here over the years. We've always said that Kyle Shanahan has gotten the better, right, of Sean McVay. And Sean McVay has always gotten the better of the Cardinals. And the Cardinals sometimes have gotten the better of the Seahawks. It's this year you got to throw it all out because we have now Jonathan Gannon in his second year in Arizona, Mike Macdonald in his first year. So can Mike Macdonald get off the mat here? And can the Seahawks kind of break the curse here against the 49ers? Because whomever is calling the defense for the Niners, they have had the Seahawks number. Geno Smith, awful against them. I do think the Niners are the better team here. This game is in San Francisco, and I am not going to make this, I don't know, everything is all of a sudden awesome for the 49ers because they're after the bye thing, a thing. but Christian McCaffrey showed me enough last week. They're a different offense with him on the field, and save for Jake Moody missing some kicks, that game would have been a lot more comfortable for them in Tampa. It wasn't. He missed a bunch of kicks, and he needed to hit one in the end of the game. I am back on the 49ers hype train, although to me, it's still Sam moving pretty slowly down the track. Next week, to me, as they go to Green Bay, that's a late window kick. Next week in the 4 o'clock Eastern time window in Green Bay, I will learn a lot more about the 49ers next week. This week, though, is still a big divisional test. It's one I think they pass.
Bosa, 8.5 sacks in his last 7 games against the Seahawks. Is that good? And Bosa obviously was part of what I thought was the most spectacular play of week 10. Of course, it was him and Baker Mayfield sort of dancing out of bounds when Baker converted on 4th and 7. You're right. If not for Moody, that game is a lot less interesting. Moody missed 3 kicks. And by the way, I wanted to correct myself and commend you. Younghoe Koo did miss 3. There were 2 kickers who missed 3. 2 kickers that are pretty considerable who missed 3 last week. That Falcons-Saints game would have been different. Younghoe, I thought he only missed the 2, but he missed 3. And Moody,
then Jake Elliott got on that bandwagon last night.
Certainly with 2 and an extra point. That hurts and could have hurt. And again, the Eagles love giving away points, and they did give away 7 last night with that. But to your point about how dominant this has been in one direction, you're absolutely right. The 6th straight, but not only that, in watching these games so closely, and again, for someone, I've got, every week I'm in one of these pools where the point spread for every game, and I can't tell you, I feel like for the last 6 games, I've taken the Seahawks and the points in all of these, and it hasn't been close, Andrew. These games, for some reason, I mean, I just feel like they should come down to the wire. It feels like you kind of remember that, oh, this was such a spectacular rivalry. It still can be. We all know, the Crabtree and Richard Sherman moment in the NFC Championship a few years back, of course, but it hasn't been that. It just hasn't been as good as some of these Seahawks been. It has not happened against the Niners. And to me, the Niners, they're 1-0 now. The Niners are 1-0. I just consider this the sort of McCaffrey era of the Niners, what Shanahan's been able to do with him. They're 1-0 and it sort of
the
starts
playoff standings. I get it.
Right? They're sort of 1-0 in this era now, where that division is so feasible because the Cardinals are, like you said, it's just a game and a half up. And you said it. This is sort of the Niners. Now, you said the train's moving slowly, but you're sort of on it.
Slowly.
Right. But we feel the Niners are a playoff team, and the Niners are not going to likely be the 1 seed. So they will be, let's stamp it, this is the team nobody wants to face, right? I have a feeling when the playoffs start, the Niners will be the classic. Nobody wants to face them. They will be playing a road game. They could win the division, of course, but they will.
I think they need to win the division.
And they then would be on the road after that, right? They would play
sure.
likely 1 home game and then have to go divisional and conference championship on the road. And that'll be a different road for them. And you don't see them as the Super Bowl team anyway. So yeah, I just think 1-0 McCaffrey, it begins now. I'm starting to judge them in a different way now.
I think if you look at the way the NFC is packed, I think it would behoove them greatly to win the division. Absolutely. The AFC and the NFC are far, far different. The number 7 team of the AFC right now, the Denver Broncos, at 5-5. The number 7 team in the NFC, the Packers, at 6-3. The Packers just seem to be a far better team to me on paper than the Broncos. One has Jordan Love, who's a turnover machine. The other has Bo Nix, who's actually played really well and should have beaten the Chiefs last week, but I digress. It's just the conferences feel a lot different, and there are a lot of mediocre teams who are in the conversation of the AFC, and the Niners have to prove that in the NFC, they are not a mediocre team. I think they're better than mediocre, but how much better? I don't know. We'll find out this week and next when they get the Seahawks and then have to go on the road to play Green Bay. All right. So those are 2 of the 5 that mean something to us. You want to skip the Bills and Chiefs, get that to the end.
Absolutely.
Let's hold off on that one to the end. Let's go Packers and Bears. Speaking of the Green Bay Packers, they're on the road at a reeling Chicago Bears team. This is the oldest, and for my money, don't you throw out the records here. I know you spoke of the Bills. I'm sorry, the Ravens and the Steelers. For my money, and I used to work in this rivalry. I spent 4 years with the Bears in Chicago. This is the best rivalry in the NFL. It's as good a rivalry as there is in sports. I really do mean that. In American sports, Yankees, Red Sox, whatever, the Bears just haven't held their end of the bargain a lot in the last 20 years. They did go to a Super Bowl with Rex Grossman. They had the NFC Championship thing where Todd Collins had to come off the bench a decade ago. They've had their moments, certainly, but this is the 209th meeting between the Bears and the Packers. That includes the postseason. That is by far the most in the NFL. I know Packers, Lions, Bears, Lions in on that as well. The Bears right now are the 9 seeds somehow in the NFC. They're not out of it, guys, at 4-5. The Packers, as mentioned, are the 7 seed, but it has been so one-sided of late. The Packers have beaten the Bears 10 consecutive. If they beat them this time, it would be their longest stretch of consecutive wins in this series. The last time, how about this one? The last time the Bears beat the Packers, Caleb Williams was a sophomore in high school. A sophomore in high school.
It's pretty good.
It has been that long. And it has almost been that long since the Bears scored a touchdown. It's been 23 consecutive drives for the Bears without scoring a touchdown. A couple of things. I do think the Bears defense this week, still without Jaquan Brisker, and that's concerning, makes a lot of plays because Jordan Love has been a turnover machine. No one takes more deep shots than Jordan Love. Statistically, he throws the ball deep more than anybody, but he's turning the ball over way too much. He's got 10 picks. That's tied for with Sam Darnold and Geno Smith. Most picks in the NFL. Bears are going to take the ball away this week. I just don't know that the Bears are going to score. Thomas Brown is a former running back. He's a former running backs coach. Now he's technically the pass game coordinator for the Bears. I feel uncomfortable for Thomas. I'm happy for him, but he was thrown into this position taking over for somebody else midseason as a play caller in Carolina, and then he got it taken away 3 weeks later. Shane Waldron's gone. Now Thomas Brown is in. I hope things change. I just don't know that the offensive line is magically going to get better this week and healthier this week. They cut Nate Davis, admitted that was a disaster earlier this week. I really wanted to work for Thomas, and I really wanted to work for Caleb. It just is so negative there right now. I don't have a lot of faith that it's going to magically change things in 1 week. But I'm gonna be a fan here. Sam, I want it to change for the Bears. I want this to work for Caleb Williams and Thomas Brown. I'm just kind of holding my breath and almost like don't want to watch, because if it doesn't work, it's just going to get uglier.
This is one where, yeah, I'd like to say divisionally, this is wide open and the Bears can win this game. And really 2 weeks ago, we thought that, Andrew. I mean, that Hail Mary, what an impact that has had. I mean, think about it. I mean,
they've been a mess since.
The Bears at that point are 5-2. The Bears, think about what the story is in that game. Also, the comeback in that game.
If they win, that is.
If the Bears win that game against the Commanders, they came back with 2 late touchdowns, including, as you brought up many times, an awful fumble by an offensive lineman at the goal line. It was really only one
touchdown. It could,
right.
I'm saying he drove them down there twice.
Correct. It could have been 2, but again, Caleb with 2 great drives, including overcoming what we just mentioned, the fumble by the offensive lineman at the goal line, and finds a way to come back and lead the Commanders in that game before, of course, the ridiculous Hail Mary. So that's how different this could have been, right? I mean, right there, 4-2 team becomes 5-2, and who knows? And now instead, you're looking at 3 straight losses, offensive coordinator Waldron out. And this could be one of those, Andrew, where do we get the sort of, look, when the head coach is replaced, you always get that, win one for Rizzy as the Saints did, the previous week. Will it happen with offensive coordinator shakeup? Probably happens a little less in that scenario. This feels like, again, the Packers have just been so dominant in this. The Bears do have the best red zone defense. That's interesting. I mean, it just in a season that's really not going the right way. That's at least something that could play a factor. And as you said, the turnovers are going to be, if Jordan Love continues to be that, and he's good for a pick six. I mean, he's been 2 of the ugliest pick sixes of the season are both his. I mean, the one against the Rams from his own end zone is reprehensible.
Even though they've allowed the fewest sacks in the NFL. So they're actually keeping them reasonably clean.
But it certainly feels one-sided here. I think it's going to be a spirited Bears effort. Certainly, Caleb feels like he's got something to prove, I'm sure. But it's tough to go away from Green Bay here.
Marshawn Lloyd, I'm looking at my phone here. That's what I was doing here. Just get the notification. Marshawn Lloyd, the rookie running back out of USC who had been out for a while. There had been hope that he might be back this week. Ain't going to happen because Matt LaFleur just announced that he has appendicitis.
Hey.
And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Matt LaFleur have his out this summer? Or no, he did. It was something else. He broke his collarbone. I don't remember. There was some kind of freak Matt LaFleur thing. Anyway, appendicitis for Marshawn Lloyd, the rookie running back out of USC. So do not expect to see him. I'm going to make a prediction. The Bears will score a touchdown this week. It might be a defensive touchdown, but the Bears are going to get in the end zone this week. You have a guarantee or your money back. Last I checked, this show is free. You're not going to see a dime from me. I'm going to go with the Packers here. Yeah, I mean, for recreational purposes only. All right, let's get to the game in LA on Sunday night. We're going to get to the Bills and the Chiefs in a sec. Sunday night football. I was there for Monday night football at SoFi this week. Sunday night football, actually consecutive Sunday nights at SoFi, because next week you have the Rams and the Eagles. This Sunday night is going to be the Bengals and the Chargers. If you look at the AFC standings, at least for now, you have the Chargers, a wild card team. They are 6-3. They're the best scoring defense in the NFL. The Bengals come in at 4-6. Again, one of those teams that is, even though you lost this past week on Thursday night to the Ravens, you are still in the conversation as a Browns fan. That makes their loss to the Chargers before the bye even more frustrating, because you'd be 3-6 this week heading into New Orleans and still at least in the outskirts of the conversation. The Bengals defense is not good enough to take them many places. The Chargers defense, conversely, is. Jesse Minter, 41 years old, number one scoring defense in the NFL right now is the Chargers rookie DC, is going to get some head coaching interviews in the offseason. I have no doubt. I also have no doubt, with T. Higgins now coming back this week, that Joe Burrow can solve this defense. Jesse Minter, great, much like Mike McDonald, same tree for changing the look pre-snap, post-snap when it comes to coverage, who's coming, who's dropping. Joe Burrow's also really good at deciphering that kind of thing. I think this is the week that somebody deciphers the Jesse Minter defense. Right? He's not doing anything crazy. They're playing a lot of zone here, right? But it's who's dropping into the zone and where's the pressure coming from. I think this chess match, Joe Burrow wins it. And I think the Bengals go on the road and they beat the Chargers. Now, again, Herbert playing lights out. Herbert is having one of the most low-key, low-stat, amazing seasons in recent quarterback history. He's that good right now. You give him that bit of a window, he's going to kill you. They're going to run the ball, and when he takes his shots, he will beat you. But, Sam, I just got a gut on this one as well. I think the Bengals are, and I don't think they make the playoffs, but I think they stay in the conversation to make the AFC that much more interesting by going into LA and winning this week.
I'd love to see that. I think the league's more interesting with that. And what a shame it would be for Burrow, who's leading the league in passing yards, and then Chase, who's leading every wide receiver statistical category.
He's taking a run to the Triple Crown.
I mean, Jamar Chase is Triple Crown wide receiver right now. And of course, if he got to play the Ravens one more time, he would absolutely run away with it. But it would be a shame to not see either of those two in the postseason. They're going to play a factor, but I'll go Chargers here because I'm going to stick with something I said to start the season.
Because you're trying to prove your point. You picked them
exactly.
in the playoffs.
I'd rather, and again,
you're going to ride them until they lose.
And in sort of a coin flip type of a situation where this game we expect to be an incredibly close one, that Chargers number one defense is also something that we should mention. I don't think enough people are looking at that as far as points per game, 13.1 a game. I mean, that's pretty interesting. I don't think a lot of people are talking about that. And the Chargers are constantly a team that's not necessarily talked about that much. This will be much like you said, Thursday night forces everyone with the conversation. Sunday night, it's not quite a standalone that nothing else is happening, but likely some more people will be talking about this one. So if the Chargers are able to do something special here, there'll be a little more shine on Harbaugh, Herbert, etc. And by the way, I mean, Dobbins also quite a story this year. I mean, you could talk comeback player of the year, perhaps with Dobbins, what he's been doing in LA. This is a special one. Also for the Bengals, really interesting. their first return trip since losing the Super Bowl to the Rams. This will be back in that building where they obviously played a spectacular game. Late penalty, you could argue, could have taken that game either way. Obviously, Burrow getting sacked, 9 times in the Super Bowl didn't help. But I'll say this is what the Chargers of the past, it's hard to sort of lose the entire perception of what the Chargers were with Staley and Anthony Lynn. And to
Harbaugh's doing a good job of it, but call me in January.
I'm
and that's not meant to be negative.
No, I'm completely with you. And look, you told an amazing story about Harbaugh the last time we were together chatting about what he did with the stadium when he was with the Niners. I mean, that's great. And he is clearly changing the culture quickly, and has quite a connection with his quarterback. And like, I'm going to lean on the Chargers, the 13.1 a game from a defensive standpoint. That's what sticks out to me. You know, much like the Eagles last night held McLaurin to the one catch. If they can contain Chase, that feels like the difference on this one.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. It's one where I think a lot of people's opinions on the bottom of the AFC could change, because if the Bengals do win it, it makes the stretch run of the AFC North that much more interesting. The Chargers lose it, they're still very much in the conversation. They already got to 6 wins, which 6 wins in the AFC is a lot right now if you're not a division winner. So it's not as if they can afford to lose this game, but it is an interesting one to say the least here. And, you know, potential playoff preview if they both get in. Now, they would both likely be in as wild cards. I don't think Kansas City's going to give up the AFC West. They're going to win that again, but that remains to be seen. As we get to the game of the year of the week, it's the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to use similar language, and that is talk to me in January, that I just used there with the Chargers. Because as Josh Allen said this week, yeah, it's the regular season. If we beat them, it's not going to mean much. It is and it isn't. You have to beat them come January. And that hangs over this game. It is the 2 best quarterbacks of our generation right now, not named Lamar Jackson, who does have the 2 MVPs and is going to win a 3rd. It's the 9-0 Chiefs, the 8-2 Bills. It's the 1 seed in the AFC visiting the 2 seed in the AFC. It's Mahomes and Allen, part 8. It's an undefeated team trying to get to 10-0, trying to win 16 consecutive games, including the postseason. They haven't lost since Christmas. There are so many storylines here, but the storyline that means the most to me is that the Bills have beaten the Chiefs 3 straight in the regular season, but have still lost to them 3 straight in the postseason. And that the Chiefs knocked them out in 2000. They knocked them out in 2021. They knocked them out in 2023. And that no matter what happens in this game, and I think the Bills are going to win, it's still going to be will Kansas City repay them that favor in January? This game means a lot. This game is clearly the best game on the schedule. This game clearly deserves all the hype. And I know Josh Allen is trying to say all the right things in the podium, and maybe it's just a cliche when he says it means more in January than it does this week. Maybe he's trying to temper expectations or control the enthusiasm if they win. This game only means so much to me because January is when it truly, truly matters. Now, one team is blowing everyone out. The Bills have won their 8 games by like 15, 16 points, average margin of victory. The Chiefs are barely scraping by. That's why I think the Bills win. I think right now the Bills are the better overall team, even without Matt Milano, even without Dawson Knox. I think they're the better team, and they're at home. But I don't know. What does it mean? I'm not trying to be the party pooper here, Sam. I'm just saying all I know is that we should get a good game, and I hope we get the rematch.
I'm rooting, and again, obviously with the Eagles hat hanging behind me, etc. My family's from Philadelphia, Eagles fan, happy to say it, but I'm rooting for Kansas City the rest of the way. I'm rooting for the Chiefs the rest of the way.
You want them to go undefeated, rooting for them, that kind of thing?
It's a more interesting postseason. Everything is more interesting with the Chiefs undefeated. I also feel that they have something to play for. In other words, this regular season game, now all of a sudden the regular season, these games, not that they wouldn't matter to get the 1 seed, but I think the Chiefs now firmly look at the schedule and say, okay, we could get to 16-0. Obviously, this being a massive swing game and this being the one to circle, not that beating Cincinnati and Baltimore before that weren't huge, but they've done that. And so now it's the Buffalo game that becomes the linchpin. Not that they couldn't lose a game anywhere, and they clearly could have lost to the Broncos last week, but this is the game where if you get it, the 16-0 conversation is everywhere.
Well, it would be 16 right? Straight.
As you said, 16 straight, and 16-0 for this season becomes a conversation. This is the conversation on Sunday night and Monday if the Chiefs win this game. It's these Chiefs are going 16-0 because looking at the schedule the rest of the way, again, to have beaten Cincinnati, to have beaten Baltimore, to have beaten Buffalo, to have won a game where the Broncos clearly had you on the ropes and you had to block a kick. This is remarkable. What's interesting is this team from a turnover margin is on the wrong side of that.
Absolutely.
7 one-score wins this season.
And the Bills have 19 takeaways.
The Bills are the number 2 team in regards to turnover margin behind the Vikings. This looks, as you said, like the Bills win. Absolutely.
But the Bills have lost to 2 good teams. They've lost to the Ravens. They've lost, if you consider the Texans a good team. They've lost to the Texans. They did beat the Cardinals, right?
That was
their one.
That was also week
kind
1.
of good win.
Right.
That was at home. Arizona was, put up a really good fight there. Almost pulled it out. Bills won. Excuse me. So that was their first and really their only big and good win this year. This is a step up in weight class. And when I say they're the better team, I don't say convincingly to you or even to myself. I'm not entirely convinced of it. The Chiefs' defense, however, has been lights out in the fourth quarter. Now I'm going to I'm stealing this from our friends over the NFL, their great research department. Sam, this is maybe the most mind-blowing thing this year about almost any team. The Chiefs obviously keep coming back, right? They keep having all these fourth quarter comeback wins. They have, when trailing in the fourth quarter this year, allowed this many points.
That's unheard of.
0.
It's unheard
when
of.
Trailing in the fourth quarter this year, no one has added to their lead. They haven't allowed a point. Better yet, you know how many yards they've given up this year when trailing? In other words, they have to make a comeback. They're trailing in the fourth quarter. How many yards do you think they've given up?
This is per game, you're saying, or totality?
No, total.
Come on.
20. They've given up 20 yards in the fourth quarter this year when trailing. So,
and they've trailed. And by the way, it's not a throwaway because they have trailed numerous times in the fourth quarter this season.
Exactly. Now, last week, they were leading, and they gave up a length of the field drive to Bo Nix to get in field goal range, and then they blocked the kick. So, they're a little. There's some parenthetical things that should be noted there, right? But when they've been down, they have kept the other team down, so that Patrick Mahomes can work his magic.
And it's interesting. Mahomes had mentioned something last week about what Andy Reid does during training camp to put them in situations.
Oh, he runs the toughest camp in the NFL.
Yes. So he grinds them through what the end of a game will be like constantly so that they are so dog tired to run through those scenarios so that they are more equipped than other teams to be fresh when the game is late as opposed to vice versa. And that is what we're seeing again and again and again. And that's why it feels like a march towards 16-0. You look at what happened in 2020, that AFC Championship game was not that close, Andrew. I think the final score ended up being, but overall Kansas City led that game from snap to final whistle. That was sort of the Bills, on the rise. The 2021 game was the one that changed overtime forever. That was the shootout in a game which many people thought Josh Allen was the best player on the field that day and did not win. And then last season's divisional, remember the Bills were lining up for a game tying kick and missed.
Tyler Bass missed wide right.
That was devastating and brought back memories of the Super Bowl against the Giants, of course. And that was crushing. You mentioned it, the 3 regular season wins, but the 3 postseason losses. And of course, we should keep in mind as we're talking about caveats, the Chiefs nearly won last season's regular season game. We're showing right now the play where Mahomes gets to Kelsey tosses it to Tony, and Tony runs into the end zone for what looks like a game-winning touchdown.
It was also the right call.
Tony was a step offsides. He was. Everyone went back. There were freeze frames of that, and it was the right call. But it's just interesting to note, yes, it's been 3 straight in the regular season. However, clearly last season's game could have could have gone another way. That's all. But yeah, I'm just gonna.
But that's the thing about this series. All of these games,
they are all spectacular. They're all special, and that's what makes this so exciting, so interesting. I again, I'm going to say this. It's not. I'm not rooting. This is not. I'm not rooting necessarily for history. I just find every game more interesting with a perfect team on the slate. Not that every Chiefs game wouldn't be interesting, but think about this. If they're 16-0 heading into a divisional matchup in the playoffs, right? I mean, again, not that a Chiefs playoff game wouldn't matter, but chasing that Brady team, and again, they will have set more records likely defensively than offensively, because remember that
records offense.
Exactly. The Brady Moss team set nearly every record before Peyton Manning broke them.
They beat teams by 3 scores every week.
Except the Giants at the end of the regular season, and then obviously in the Super Bowl.
But only 2 teams have ever obviously gone through a regular season undefeated. So to say that makes it more interesting, it's only happened twice.
Correct. But what I'm saying is this much. We've had seasons where the Chiefs are being questioned constantly. And instead this season, it's almost one where we're not talking. I would say that the media noise is not necessarily that much on the Chiefs. There's other stories. People are enjoying Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, the Saquon, all of those stories. The Chiefs, you don't want to say the Chiefs do anything quietly, but yeah.
They're as boring a 9-0 team as we've ever seen.
And is it because Mahomes
they're winning every game in the fourth quarter.
And they're winning it so exciting. Again, they're making it so interesting. It has been so exciting. So yeah, so I'll say Chiefs here just because I'd rather see that perfection. I'd rather see the Chiefs being the sort of steamroll towards the playoffs in another Super Bowl.
All right. I think the Bills win this game. But again, nothing surprises me, nor will I take any grand proclamations. I will not make any grand proclamations after this game. And that's not trying to downplay it. Like, sign me up. I'm going to be flying back from New Orleans. I will be at the bar at MSY. Come find me late Sunday afternoon watching this one. Absolutely. But I don't know that we could draw any grand proclamations from it. I'm going to say that in advance. Okay? Not to be Nancy negative here, or negative Nancy. I've heard it both ways.
But the proclamation will be, Andrew, the perfect record. If the Chiefs win, that will be the proclamation. That perfection is in play.
It's in play. It's in play right now.
It is. But after
it's in play right now. Yeah. Real quick, one last thing on the strength of schedule remaining, just so we have everything as we look to the second half of the season. The Bears have the most difficult. I should have mentioned this. The most difficult strength of schedule remaining, and it's not even close. The Browns have the second most difficult, but there is a significant difference between the Bears and the Browns. And then with a bye week this week, the Buccaneers have the easiest strength of schedule remaining. They still get the Panthers twice. They get the Raiders. They get the Jets and Giants. It is a oof.
And they'll get Evans back.
Schedule.
And they should get Evans back.
Potentially get Mike Evans back as well. Chris Godwin, obviously, not coming back. It is back to work and back to football this week, friends. Hope you enjoy your Week 11. Hope you watch it with friends and family. And remind all those friends and family to like, subscribe, share, whatever, this podcast on both YouTube, Siciliano Show, or Thinking Out Loud, wherever you find your podcast. For Sam Batesh, my name is Andrew Siciliano. So long, everybody.